Now tuning in to Earbud Media. Audio for everyone.
I will say, listen, I don't want to start off this by talking about visuals in a famously audio medium, but just the curly hair representation that is going on here today truly cannot be understated. It's very powerful, is all I'm saying.
I feel welcomed and I feel understood.
It is, you are in a safe space.
Yeah,
here,
you're seen and heard.
Sure. It is I have never felt so represented by a guest, that is for sure. Both by having someone who has curly hair and also is a out and proud directioner. Oh, yeah. I think I feel so safe in this space right now.
Yeah, we've got a lot of good middle ground.
Right. And like, Cody, I know that you were like, oh, Megan's going to be great. Bring her on. Let's talk about Panic Room. But it's like, joke's on you. We're actually going to talk about One Direction this whole time. So
it was an elaborate ruse, and you got me.
Right.
Just an absolute dream come true.
Like, I know, Megan, you are an incredibly accomplished, like, fucking author and illustrator, but can we actually talk about the more important things in life, which is your love for incredible music? Because that's what matters to me.
For boy bands and top 40 pop music.
Yes. Yeah, that's, I mean, listen, that's all that really matters.
I do a lot in this life, but that's really where my heart lies.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And that makes complete sense. That's what we have brought you on truly as an expert for. So that makes a lot of sense. If anyone, Megan, has the audacity to not know who you are, could you tell them who you are and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. I am a writer, an artist, and zine maker who lives in Chicago.
Triple threat.
Chicago representation in the house today, too.
Hell yeah.
I've written for places like the New York Times, Time Magazine, Chicago Tribune, and I have a column for the Chicago Reader called Inkling that I write and illustrate, and I actually have convinced them to let me write about Twilight in the past, which was a real career highlight.
Amen.
Yes.
The most important use of your column.
Right. I was like, finally.
Yeah. You gotta spread the gospel.
Usually my editor who I work with there is very like, okay, cool, great idea. But for the Twilight one, she was a little like, what's the Chicago hook here? And I was like, well, first of all, Edward Cullen was born in Chicago.
Right. So check your facts, actually.
Second of all, I'm here in Chicago now watching Twilight. So she let me do what I wanted, and it seemed like it was one of the most popular columns I've done with them.
Hell yeah.
So it sounds like you were right and they were wrong. So how about that?
Thank you, Salem, for letting me write that.
Speaking of your incredible background with writing and also pop culture, one of the things that I wanted to ask you a little bit about is, again, thinking about the most important things that you do in your life. Could you tell me a little bit more about the Katniss and Peeta fan fiction that you've written in your life?
Oh, man. This is like digging deep into some tweets I made when I was drunk. I am also a big Hunger Games fan.
You're safe here.
Hell yeah.
I assumed. I feel like we've got mostly just like the same Venn diagram of interests on this call.
Yeah, it's a circle.
We are edging on a circle, at this point.
So I wrote a Katniss Peeta fanfic that was like post books where they're just living in District 12 alone and they're really sad. It was just rooted in a deep, deep sadness. Which all good fanfic, I think, tends to be. Mm-hmm. And I tried to dig it out, and it's lost to the seas of time. And I actually was like, oh, maybe I'll read some of my old fanfic on the show today. And I went and read some of it, and I'm like, this isn't funny. It's just, like, sad. All of it. So
just something to like send to your therapist to talk about later.
right. I'm like, it's
Right.
Just to unpack.
how much do you know about Remus and Sirius?
Oh my
So-
god. Oh god, that would be the amount that I would pay to not talk about that with my therapist would be so much, actually.
Yeah.
It's like, that's going to
Can't
open a
escape
lot
it.
of doors that we haven't touched yet.
It would take multiple sessions to just explain the background of that. And I don't know that I need to pay someone to do that, actually. That is powerful.
Are you both fanfic writers, or have you written it in the past?
That's such a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Oh, man.
Cody, would you like to go?
I feel like I'm the only one of the two of us that I've written one fan fiction in my entire life, and no one will ever find it or read it ever. But it was about Adventure Time, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, the gays in Adventure Time. The
I love
two
Adventure
ladies.
Time.
Yeah. And so that was my trauma as a youth of being like, representation, let's make it.
That's so
and then I
beautiful.
never did it again. So that just one and done. But I was a very avid consumer when I was a youth, but not so much anymore.
This is... I don't know that I've ever said this out loud online. So this is Megan, you're really asking the deep questions here. So the long and short of it is I've never written a fan fiction. The true answer is that from about 2010 to early 2012, I was part of a Skype group with about 5 other people who was like a very loose like role play group.
Let's go.
And saying that is bringing up like literal bile in my throat, right?
Allie,
Yeah,
we're
for
really
sure.
like diving in, because I was also an avid online role player,
Yeah, same.
but I would use the Neopets message board.
Whoa!
Hell yes.
And I honestly, I remember being really ashamed of it once I like hit college. Like, I was a freshman in college and I was still like Harry Potter role playing on the Neopets message boards. And I was
Sure.
like, please let me outgrow this. And I finally did, thank God. But I'm also like, oh, I think that like made me a really good writer.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah.
This is saying these words out loud makes me further solidify why I want a partner who is so offline. I want
Sure.
someone who does not understand the words that we just said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when I say, oh, Harry Potter roleplay on a Neopets, they say, no, I don't, no, thank you, no.
Yeah.
What? And their brain scrambles.
Yeah.
But man,
Yeah.
I was having the time of my life on those message boards.
And honestly,
Yeah,
same.
absolutely. Yeah.
Honestly, same. It was a great time. I had a great community and I had real friends and I don't regret it, but saying it out loud is a little bit haunting.
Yeah.
I think too, it's like, I don't talk about it too often because I'm like, I feel embarrassment because I was so earnestly invested in this. Like, it wasn't a joke.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, do you do anything at that age not 100% in?
Mm,
And I think that's trying to develop that compassion with the inner teen. Hey, I'm going to write that down. Talk to my therapist about that. Speaking of things that I haven't thought about for a long time, and maybe for you as well, could you tell me a little bit more about a first date that you went to a Jerry Springer show?
Yeah. That would have been right around when I was weaning myself off of the Harry Potter role play.
Oh my god, it's all
Trying to fill the
connected.
Yeah, it was like I needed a distraction, maybe a real life boyfriend.
Fuck.
So I went out with this dude who was like a friend of a friend, and we went on a double date to Jerry Springer. Back when Jerry Springer used to film in Chicago, R.I.P.
Damn.
I actually don't remember that much about the show. I remember Jerry did a little like stand-up set at the beginning. And I remember after the show, this guy told me that he didn't believe in evolution, and that was enough of a red flag that we didn't ever go out again.
More of a red flag
Wow.
than the Jerry Springer show.
Yeah, the Jerry Springer show I was chill with. We had a good time.
Nice. Okay. I love this. There's so many layers to that.
Good luck to that man.
Yeah, I wonder where that dude is now. Probably like a lot of flat earther groups, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Probably nowhere, like, that I want to be.
Right. Just a completely different trajectory. One of my favorite things about the art that you do is its connection to tarot. And the book that we, when this comes out, have just finished reading has a lot of connections to tarot. Very loosely, I will say the author has done just like very remedial research on. My question for you is what your favorite tarot card is to illustrate.
I like the really, like, dramatic dark cards. So I really like the 9 and 10 of Swords, which is just, like, you're up in bed anguished, and then you're, like, stabbed in the back with a bunch of...
Just having the worst day of your life.
Yeah.
I bought way too many of these damn swords. This is awful.
Those really speak to me. But then as far as major arcana go, so this is great. This is very fresh in my mind because I just finished designing a tarot deck the other week.
Oh, subtle. Just subtle flex there.
Yeah, just, just a casual project that I did really quickly.
Right.
So as my eye twitches. But I really love the strength card in the major arcana, which in the Rider-Waite deck is a woman kind of embracing a lion. Very Twilight, lion, lamb.
Oh, yes.
But I like that it's beautiful and it's a little bit spooky. And I think so much of the tarot is that way.
Speaking of which, one of the things that we usually do, today is a little bit different because today we have good content, but traditionally we cover bad things on this show. So we like to start off with things that bring us joy to kind of balance this out. What is something that has brought you joy recently?
Yeah, I was really into the full moon last night.
Fuck
Hell yeah.
And my buddy had a telescope. So we went and set up in Winamac Park and looked at it through this telescope.
Whoa.
Crazy. It was so bright and his telescope was so strong. And now I'm like, oh, women in STEM. I understand. But that was really cool. I just kind of woke up thinking about it this morning.
Yeah.
I love telescopes and I love supermoons. That's such a great combination there.
Our girl, the moon, always
my wife
comes up in some fashion.
Cody, how you doing? I haven't talked to you in a while.
You... So now you're just deliberately lying. Also, the fact that we're recording these out of order is going to be so confusing, this running joke. Anyway, I'm chilling. I want to talk about a show that I was introduced literally last night.
Ooh.
And so this is a very proto, like, I'm not sure how much I'm going to love this, but I've seen like 2 episodes and I'm hooked. I'm in. And that is the reality television show Summer House? ?
Okay.
Are we familiar? Is anyone familiar with this?
No, but I'm intrigued.
Great. It is a Bravo situation. And I'm usually not like a Bravo head. But this is literally just, what if a group of very, wealthy New Yorkers who travel to Montauk in the Hamptons every summer for the summer. And it's their lives and it's them getting really drunk, drinking comically large bottles of rosé. And it is delicious. It is so vapid. It is incredibly powerful. They don't do any, like, introductions, really. It's not like, oh, here's this, like, confessional where it's like, hey, I'm this guy. This is my job. They're just, like, you're in it. And you're supposed to, like,
they
know
just
who
expect
people
you to
are.
know who they are.
Right, when they're not, they're nobodies. Their whole thing is just being on Summer House. And, like, they've essentially, like, rushed a sorority to, like, be in this house. Like, that's kind of, like, the stakes here. And then they also, like, do jobs in the middle, like, the work week. But they're all essentially...
Jersey Shore. Nice.
Right. They're, like, also essentially strangers. Like, they only know each other from being in previous summer houses together. Or, like, they, like, maybe have mutual friends. And it's just very... very wild to me, but
okay.
It is like Cocomelon for my brain. I feel like I'm just tapping out when I watch it. There's something about it that like sedates me. But it is apparently has been going on for 7 seasons. So I'm very early in on this journey, but I'm very excited. And there's apparently spin-offs too. I think there's a Winter House, so thrilling. I'm very excited for this journey I'm on.
I feel like that's a level of disassociation I'm just always seeking.
Anyway, how are you doing?
I'm here. It's warm in the Pacific Northwest right now, and that's unfortunate for me as someone who is on medications that give me heat intolerance. So I'm nearby lots of fans right now, but I'm surviving. My happy thing this week is a true definition of a happy thing. It's a small little piece of serotonin. And it is the TikTok account Damien's Corner. And I will warn all of our listeners, if you have, not in a bad way, but if you get sentimental very easily, I'm sorry, I also get sentimental very easily. This is a TikTok account of a father and a daughter who often take videos when they are biking, I guess I should say cycling, around town. And they are the most charming thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Because they just usually revolve around, like, them just saying good morning to each other and good morning to their surroundings. And it's so goddamn pure that I just get very emotional every time I watch them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of this, just from the jump. I feel like these smiles could heal the nation, you know? Just like this energy is.
So much of the... there's something about it where they are very similar that I find it very refreshing in a way that, you know, like Out of the Box had a very similar format, right? Like they are just different enough that you can tell that they're not like pre-filmed, right? But they have a very similar format where he always calls his daughter Miss Jackson, and she says Mr. Daddy, and they have this like really cute vibe together, and it fills me with such bliss. And I love them a lot. Yeah. In a not like creepy parasocial way, but I've just I don't know what this kind of positive relationship with a parent looks like. So I'm like, all right, I love that for
I see
you.
Hell yeah. I cannot wait to be just fully soothed by this. I'm charmed.
It's very soothing.
The media you both picked is like the total opposite of each other, too.
Yeah. 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 I like literally just brought a bad thing to the happy space. I'm like, listen, we're talking about good content later on. Let's get some trash right up front. You know?
Listen, the Cody happy thing is also the content that I usually bring to the space.
Sure.
But I didn't have a television show that was like that. I just, to pull back the curtain a little bit, 5 minutes before we started, was like, oh shit, I don't have anything. What made me cry? And what did I put in my TikTok folder of like happy things? It was this. Okay, great.
Amazing. So,
because I have to make a folder of these things. Otherwise I'll come to this and be like, nothing made me happy. The world's on fire.
I've never been happy in my entire
which is
life.
why we do this. I am waiting on bated breath, Megan, to know your Twilight backstory.
Yes, I would love to share it. So I'm just pulling up the doc. Your questions are...
Your PowerPoint deck that you have provided to share with us.
So I did actually make a PowerPoint about Twilight during the pandemic, like peak.
Yes.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, don't bury the lead.
So I graduated high school in 2008, which means that I was really that like first wave of teen girls who was just deeply obsessed or into Twilight. Yep, but I was also like alt girl in the suburbs, so I very much thought I was too cool for Twilight.
Yeah.
Then there's a real dissonance where I'm like, okay, like you thought you were too cool for it, but you also read every book. You went to the midnight release at Borders. You didn't just go to the midnight release, but you dressed up in your prom dress because the theme was Twilight prom.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Do you have photos?
That is such a good question. I don't think that I do because I was too cool.
Damn.
That's fair. We need to hack into the border surveillance. We need to find it.
Grainy security footage. But it's like, I don't think that you can really do all those things ironically.
Sure.
And that's always been sort of my struggle with Twilight, is that I think that I relate to it ironically, but then I get so much earnest enjoyment from it. It's like, there's no irony there. So I guess I've grappled with that since I was 17. Saw all the movies, loved the movies, kind of left that behind as I grew up. And then, during the pandemic, I broke my ankle, and I was not allowed to walk for about 6 months. And because of COVID, I couldn't really have a lot of visitors, or we could, like, hobble out to the backyard and sit 6 feet apart. So I was spending a lot of time alone, and I started watching all the Twilight movies again. And I think something about, like, my mushy, pandemic, bedridden brain was just like, oh yes, this is what I want to think about all the time. So I listened to all the audiobooks while I was, like, inking comics, and it became just a full spiral of Twilight obsession.
Hell yeah.
Welcome.
And it, you know, it was all familiar, but I hadn't seen most of the movies more than once. I saw them all in the theaters, and I hadn't revisited them. And so all of a sudden I was, like, watching them over and over, just, like, comfort movies on in the background. And this all kind of culminated with when I was healed and I could walk again. I flew out to Seattle to see my best friend who lives out there, who's also a big Twilight head. And we drove together to Forks and went to the Twilight Museum that the Forks Chamber of Commerce runs.
Did you see Renesmee?
Oh, of course we saw Renesmee. That was, like,
Hell yeah.
the biggest reason for going.
Sure.
I have to dig through my photos and email you some photos of me with the Renesmee doll. We saw Bella's truck. I'm wearing today, in honor of our conversation, I got a Forks High School tank top.
Yes.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I just like to think, like, people think I went to Bella's high school when I wear it. So it was just a really fun, kind of absurd trip. People are driving out to this just, like, tiny little lumber town to go see Renesmee. It's just absolutely absurd, just like the entire media franchise.
Yes.
But I was happy that I still love engaging with Twilight, but once I got home from Forks, I found that the, like, fervor of my obsession faded a little, because it was just like, there's no more intense place to take this now. Like, I did it. So I've been feeling like a healthy connection to Twilight lately.
That's good.
Hell yeah.
I'm proud of you.
I only think about it like 3 or 4 days a week.
Sure.
Yeah. Just normal.
So then I'm wondering then, because the fact that this started, like, it resurged for you at such a specific time, did you end up reading Midnight Sun?
So I did not read Midnight Sun. I got the audiobook from the library and I listened to a little bit, but because I had just listened to the original series, it just felt so similar. Maybe now's the time. Maybe it's time to jump back in.
Well, I mean, that's up to you.
What is the gender swap version called?
Oh, God. Life and Death?
Ugh, yeah.
So curious about that, but I heard it was almost like a Control F replace of the gender.
Almost exactly.
It is. Yep. If you had to choose between the two, I would do Midnight Sun, not Life and Death. I would suggest almost reading Life and Death fanfiction over the actual book. Because I think the interpretations of Life and Death by the audience have been more interesting than Stephanie, because she didn't take it far enough, unsurprisingly.
Yeah.
But I am interested to know that if you kind of step back into this, because the fact that there is a television show in development, I mean, and that's in quotes, right? Because of everything that's happening with studios right now. What will happen with your interest? But this is a a wild journey that you have been on, for sure.
Yeah, and I do feel like there are certain media franchises where I'm just always poised on the edge of obsession.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that the television show could be a catalyst for me returning to Forks.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, why wouldn't you, right? Just travel cross country. I want to know your experience with Panic Room. Had you watched this before this week?
So I had not watched Panic Room, and I wasn't sure if I had watched it or not because I remembered the premise so clearly, and I think it's because it had really good trailers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It came out in 2002, so I would have been 12. And I'm pretty sure that the trailer just sunk so deep in my brain that I thought that I had watched it. But when I turned it on and started watching it, I was like, oh no, I've never seen this movie before.
Sure. We received a question about this movie, which was, if you were making a Panic Room, what would you put in there?
Oh my god.
I felt like this one was pretty stacked.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you went to, like, practical, right? Of, like, yes, the Panic Room in the movie Panic Room was, like, good at being a panic room. Because my mind was, like, how could you make a panic room like an entire fidget toy? You know, like walls, like all the different, like, switches and stimulants you could put in there. Not at all effective as a panic room.
Sure.
I feel like in my panic room, I would want some more, like, floor pillows or something.
Yeah.
More comfort.
Definitely is lacking on comfort.
I'd want a little, like, mood lighting.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, fairy lights, little...
And maybe this is because they didn't end up looking through all of those massive trunks, but I would have prioritized masks. Felt like there were multiple points throughout this movie where I was like, oh, I'm surprised that if you needed a panic room, you wouldn't have like I'm thinking of like the big respirators, like the kind that you use when you're like in construction kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like nuclear kind of respirators, right?
Right.
That and maybe this is because I don't know that much about insulin, but like, is there not a shelf-stable kind that you could put in one of those massive trunks?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like that, I mean, obviously that was a major plot of this, just for drama. But if you're going to make a panic room, I feel like that would be helpful in some case.
If you're Jodie Foster and you're not even going to set up the separate landline in your panic room, you're probably not going to make sure there is insulin for your very...
a full day.
Right, this is true. Yeah, they really got on them quick, which is fucked up.
Yeah. I hadn't seen this I had seen this once. I'd seen it when it came out, so it's been, 20 years or so. One of the first things that caught my attention when watching this, especially when they were doing the walkthrough, is that Meg, Jodie Foster's character, could have absolutely killed Joe Goldberg in this house. Like, the Netflix show would not exist if this house still existed in Manhattan. And I think that is an important thing to know.
The crossover I didn't know I needed.
Yeah.
Also, this distracted me a little bit. If I was an adult at this point, the way I would have swooped on this brownstone and literally I would have never left this house.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
I would have died in this house because I know that it was expensive then.
Yeah.
But there's no way that you would ever catch me leaving on this real estate. Yeah. In Manhattan? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it was ginormous. No. I love, too, that in that interaction where they're, like, looking at the house for the first time, and Meg's like, oh man, this is so expensive, how will I ever financially recover from this? And Casey just, like, zips by on her scooter and is like, you don't have to pay for it all at once, it's called a rental. Like, this is not how the economy works. And it's like, ma'am, you just...
The definition of a parentified child is Sarah.
The latchkey energy is off the charts. It is so foul in this movie.
And you see that throughout, too, like, especially when they end up getting in the panic room, and Meg, it keeps talking about how, what the fuck is the husband's name? She's like, he's gonna come. Like, I called him, he's gonna show up, and Sarah, K-Stu, is like, no, he's not. Like, I know my dad, he's a piece of shit, he's not gonna come.
And his new wife sucks so bad.
Yeah, and it's like, girl, you're like 11. It is not great that you have such a solidified opinion of your guardian at this point. But I love you, and you're awesome.
And the fact that she's, like, keeping her blood sugar a secret to protect her mom.
Oh my god.
I do not remember all of these things, and that makes me really sad. Especially because Jodie Foster is the love of my life, and I want to be like, everything that you're doing is great. I'm obsessed with you. But watching it now, as an adult, I'm like, hey, why is your kid like this? Why is she seem like she's fully competent on her own? That makes me sad. But you know what? She's got a scooter and a basketball. So
right, and a dream.
And she's got a mini fridge in her room.
Yeah.
Which I know is mostly because she's, a diabetic. But, like, also a mini fridge. That's cool.
Yeah, a mini fridge is a mini fridge, regardless of what you use it for.
Exactly. That's cool. With that many stairs, I also wouldn't want to go downstairs. So I love that.
Yeah.
I want to know how you all felt about the jump scare that is Jared Leto.
It's so important. And honestly, listen, it's fucked up because, like, Jared Leto, objectively bad dude, right? Like, we can all agree, would not want to hang. Has done pretty gross things in his life. However, he is incredibly funny in this movie.
For no reason, too.
It's so fucked up. Like, there's something, David Fincher, like, casts some spell on him. That, like, makes him, I think it's also, like, 90% the cornrows, but he's also genuinely having a good time in here, and he's very good at playing a guy who sucks, obviously, but who's also just bad at crime, at heists, at planning, in any regard, and I'm very into it. It was very funny to me. It's
wild because Forrest Whitaker is taking this, like, I didn't really want to be here. I'm not cool with, like, hurting kids.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe. This, like, it's almost like a sad criminal.
Yeah.
And then I keep wanting to call him Zorro, because that's what they called him at some point.
Yeah.
Who's this, like, objectively really scary criminal.
Yeah.
And then Jared Leto, for some reason, is doing this, like, Home Alone comedy style criminal, which is a very, like, wacky, unnecessary choice, but it kind of works.
Yeah, he's like he's like tossing marbles so someone trips and falls on them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all of these are so unserious, his strategies.
It's kind of haunting.
Yeah, it's very scary.
When I had first started watching this, because I didn't remember why they broke in, my first reaction was I thought that the husband had put a hit on Meg. And I was like, oh, damn, I did not remember that David Fincher took this route. And then that didn't end up even being it. It was just like the plans were in the panic room.
Right.
And I almost kind of, that would have been interesting because the husband means nothing in this.
Yeah.
He's such a boring aspect that I didn't even remember his character from the first time watching this.
Allie, I like that in the intervening years you've, like, created a panic room fan fiction that's superior to the original plot. Like, it's darker.
It is dark. I mean, and I think that that's because I mostly know, like, David from Gone Girl, and so I was like, oh, it has to be more dark and twisted than this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is dark and twisted, but not that. It's not that twisted.
Yeah. It's very stressful, and, like, every time I watch this movie, I kind of am taken aback by, David Fincher is good at making motion pictures, right? But, like, the way that this is very tense, but also, like, very in a realism sort of situation. But, like, so much of it, and so much of what this plot hinges upon and like the suspense of it is like the interiority of how buildings work and like ripping like the Ethernet cable to like hook up this phone line. There's like so many like horror trope isms, but like just what if a building and like you just have to like understand how a building works, and within like being stressed out for like 90 odd minutes straight in real time, and also like having to think objectively and like smart while you're stuck in this room and really can't do anything, is very smart. It's like trying to like have this like meditech like maze outside, but like figure out from the inside. It's like very interesting.
I agree.
We get all of those shots of like the camera going through the floors of the house, going through the floors, the infrastructure. Over and over again, we really get to see the inner workings of this house.
Right.
The house is really one of the main characters, if not the main character of this movie.
She is the moment.
And I love that because it's beautiful. I mean, listen, it's a beautiful house.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think the camera work is one of the things that watching this again was a standout for me. There was one moment, I think pretty early on, when there was like a camera tilt when Meg was in the bed and there was like a shadow behind her where I was like, oh, damn.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's one that they have a little bit later on. I think it was when it was all silent. When Meg ends up like going out, and like her heart is racing and like the lamp breaks.
Yeah.
So some of the like camera work in this is like really good. And I remember writing down that I was glad I watched this in broad daylight, not because it's a necessarily scary movie, but this is one of my, as someone who like lives alone, this is genuinely a fear. And so I was like, I'm glad that I'm not watching this at night because this would have freaked me out.
Yeah. I'll say I had the opposite experience where I watched this at night as a woman who lives alone, and I took an edible, and maybe 20 minutes in, I was like, oh, this wasn't a good edible movie. Like, I'm stressed.
Yeah, that'll do it to you. You know?
Oh my god. Okay, we cannot go further without, I just remembered this. I'm sorry, we have to talk about Jared Leto's cornrows again, but this is important. Yeah. Because there is something, there's like a behind the scenes video, like on YouTube about like, David Fincher's talking and all the cast is like doing stuff. It's like a cute little like DVD menu movie or whatever. And in it, there's a moment where Jared Leto, like deadpan to the camera, is talking about the cornrows, and it's like, well, actually, fun fact, David Fincher did these. He like, a lot of people don't know this. Like, he really spent a lot of time in his youth, like in the islands, and like knows how to braid cornrows. Like, it's actually really impressive. And I cannot stress enough, this is not real, but he says it so like matter of factly. There is no question, and so like every few years, this like the screenshot of this quote and like also this like screen recording of this fucking YouTube video goes viral on Twitter. And people think that David Fincher knows how to do cornrows, which is so important to me. And that's my favorite misinformation. Like, it's so important, and honestly I want it to be true so bad. Apparently it was actually done by this woman named Candy, but I choose to believe that David Fincher learned how to do cornrows, and did it for this movie. And it's really,
he's a man of many talents. What can I say? He's
incredibly skilled, and I've never doubted him before. So why should I start now?
There's a moment too while we're talking about this horrific choice, because every time that he was on screen, not just because it's Jared Leto, but also because he has those cornrows, I was haunted. Yeah. This character specifically, when they get to the part with the propane, his character is like, listen, I'll accept that I'll kill this mother and daughter by propane. That's fine. I don't give a fuck. But I am going to draw the line at waking up these neighbors in the middle of the middle of the night. Like, that's not acceptable.
God.
And I found this choice when they had already started, using like massive construction tools to try and drill from the bottom up into the panic room, interesting. Because how would that not wake up a neighbor already?
Right. They were already kind of going pretty hard at that point.
Yeah. It is a decision. I also want to say that in addition to loving Sarah, the fact that she knows Morse code, but also that she knows it from Titanic, beautiful.
So important.
Obsessed.
So good.
I thought that you could imagine, like, in the theater. I bet that got a big laugh.
Yep.
And it's a movie with not a ton of laugh out loud moments.
But that one will do it.
Yeah.
The other thing that made me very endeared to Sarah is the fact that her insulin pack had her name written in Comic Sans.
Oh, yeah.
Very small choice, but a decision that I loved, and it made my heart very soft.
There's a lot of very dramatic font work going on in this movie. Like, even the opening with this, like, embossed, like, floating names on the city skyline of New York City, like, is incredibly powerful.
And the ads at the start.
Yeah, that's true.
When they did that, really was a beautiful choice, and I loved it so much.
I also found it very interesting that they don't really say that she's diabetic. They keep saying she's sick. And it's somewhat implied. And I don't even know if they ever straight up say this is insulin. They're just like, she needs a shot. And it's like, did we not know about diabetes in 2002? I feel like we had a decent understanding.
The science was there.
And it's like, she doesn't tell Forrest Whitaker, like, my daughter's diabetic, she needs her insulin. She's like, my daughter's sick, she needs her shot. It's like, we can explain this in 2 or 3 buzzwords, and he'll get it.
Right. It's also it's like used to sort of like this gotcha, like, plot twist in a way. Of like, this is the only way, like, we're gonna bust this plan or whatever. And it's like, this child is dying. Like, we're very close to the end here. And we can be deliberate with our word choices, actually. And then I think it'll be fine.
Especially when Forrest and the scary guy, who, at the end, it should be noted, he does punch a child. So, like, fuck this dude for real. Was like, we're gonna kill your kid. And it's like, homie, please don't kill a child. And also, like, she's diabetic. You can very clearly see, like, she's wearing a watch that's monitoring her blood sugar. That's not something that you wouldn't just, like, wear that for funsies. Right, exactly. And also, you could convert, like, I mean, there's probably other reasons, I guess, if you were part of, like, Big Citrus, but you wouldn't usually just, like, keep orange juice in a mini fridge by someone's bed, in addition to, like, their insulin pack there. So, gather the context clues, please.
I also like how in all of the food in the panic room, nothing has sugar. Seems like a real oversight if you're building a survival fortress.
It's so weird. It was a very weird choice, given that, like, I mean, you don't need a lot, but you do, like, sugar is an essential thing that you do need to survive. Like, you have blood sugar for a reason.
It's like, was the original millionaire doing keto?
Oh my god. What was it back then? Atkins?
I was probably on Atkins around that time. Little milk.
I was 100% on Atkins.
Yeah.
My dad was. I remember that so much. He ate so much bacon.
Oh, my dad is still on that train.
Oh, man.
How did you feel about the interaction that Meg had with that cop? I guess there were 2 cops there, but, like, that one cop specifically.
That's, like, one of the most stressful parts of the movie for me, because, like, so much of it is like, what are you doing? Stop.
Right.
I just want to, like, shake her. Like, what is going on?
Because it's very notable. Friends who are listening to this, who have not watched the movie, like, the whole part of the panic room is that there's surveillance cameras everywhere.
Right.
And you can see them in the panic room, but you can't hear them. That's, like, very important to know.
Yeah, it's not a 2-way situation. It's just like I forget what it's called, intercom, whatever. Right. So it's, like, incredibly stressful. And again, most of this feels incredibly in real time, right? So it's like you're watching
Yeah.
this literal conversation unfold and you're shaking in your goddamn boots because you're like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen and who's going to die today, if anything.
Yeah,
but the
because
way
the neighbor was a shit show, didn't do anything.
yeah, oh, absolute flop. Like he literally saw the Morse code and was like, probably nothing. Like actually,
911 put them on hold, and it's like, no, thank you though.
yeah.
Steven didn't give a shit.
Is that even how 911 works? I thought if you
No.
called
No.
from an
Yeah,
address,
they, like-
they would come no matter what.
Yeah, almost
Exactly.
Yeah, like also even more so if you hang up because it's like someone's in a compromised position. Like that's usually how that goes. So I don't trust.
Especially when like the year that this not only was filmed but like came out, they wouldn't. You would have to come. Like that's the whole thing.
Yeah,
You'd have to go. So yeah, everyone hasn't given a shit at this point.
right.
But they listen to a white man who's like a billionaire or whatever in pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, you're like, all right, I guess you made a point.
Right. And it doesn't make any sense why, because most of the time when she's talking to the cops, she has like her back turned, so they couldn't even read her lips if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cop offers her a non-verbal way to communicate distress.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like wink, wink.
Blink if you're in trouble and you can't tell me. And Jodie Foster has never had a more wide-eyed stare. They're like, her eyes are like watering because she hasn't blinked in so long.
It's like I never considered that.
Like, and this is still, I want to make this very clear. This is still an ACAB space.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a shockingly aware response
yeah.
for a police officer. To be like, hey, you're acting weird. Can you just like blink a couple of times in one eye if you're like not good? And she's like, I don't know how to blink, actually. I've never blinked in my life.
No.
I called my husband because I wanted to sleep with him.
Right, I was horny, okay? Is that a crime? Officer?
The other thing that I have questions about, as someone who has been but never lived, does it rain this much in New York? This much for like 8 hours straight?
It was, yeah, it felt very consistent, which was probably not accurate. It's like, oh wow, for all day, just gonna be this. But I'm no weatherman.
Because that is like a critical part of this whole thing.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe in 2002?
Sure.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this was like flash flood level, day after
Right,
tomorrow level rains.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
It was very clear at the end when Forrest Whitaker like takes those bank bonds and then they just like dissolve like candy paper. But rip, I guess.
Yeah, damn.
Did you both want him to escape?
Yes, because I love Forrest Whitaker.
Sure.
And I didn't want him to be the bad guy in this.
Yeah, they are really, the movie is really fighting to make him a hero, even as they're holding these women totally hostage. It's like,
Yeah, it's like,
not
well, you did-
all criminals.
Right. It's like, listen, he made one whoopsie, okay? Is that, like, he imprisoned a mom and her child for several hours to try to steal $22 million in bonds. But should he take the fall for it? Who can say? Is that a crime?
How do bonds work? Can he just take those to a bank?
Right. It's like, also, like, the most suspicious form of, like, money laundering, right? Of just being like, you can't, like, pull up to a bank and it's like, hey, here's $22 million in bonds. These are all for sure mine. Don't question it.
Can you go to any bank and be like, hi, I have a group on here for $22 million?
Yeah, or
Even
like,
if
are
he
they going
did
to take
them-
those at Target?
Yeah, can you accept these?
Can I want to buy multiple Targets, please.
Can I get change for this, actually? Can I get cash back? Like, what? Even if he did it one at a time, if he brought in $1 million banknote, that would still be suspicious, right? Like, that would still be... And he'd
that
have to
would be
do that.
multiple levels of reporting that employee would have to do.
Right, and he'd have to go to 22, hopefully 22 different banks to do them one at a time, and that'd still be incredibly suspicious. How do you do that? How do you get away with this?
2002, with the level of, like, reporting that was done across different banks, that would still happen.
Right.
It might take a while, but it would still happen.
Yeah.
Listen, Forrest Whitaker's character did not do harm to Sarah.
Sure.
He did, if I'm remembering correctly, he also did not do physical harm to Meg.
So, I will say, it was his idea to fill the room with gas.
That is true.
Okay,
that
alright,
is true.
well, you know what? Fuck me, because that was very bad.
Yeah. One of the worst
and he also
things.
did massive destruction to their property. So, like...
Yeah.
Because he was like, oh yeah, you all are not going to get in from the bottom because even past the concrete, there's steel. So we should do this the faster way. And he was like, oh yeah, but don't go fast. You'll kill them. We're just trying to do a negotiating tactic. Just a little propane.
God.
Right,
Just
and
a
again,
tiny little
They
bit.
didn't even really try to negotiate. They moved really quickly to gas them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the second thing they thought of.
So, Forrest Whitaker, fine, great, harmless. The character he's playing, just because he killed Zorro at the end,
Sure.
doesn't mean that he achieved his stance of, I don't hurt kids.
Right. Does not absolve him of his crimes.
No.
And he did give Sarah her insulin shot.
But he did have weaponized incompetence. Because he was like, you have to talk me through this while you're dying. So.
What is this mystery juice? I'm scared.
Also, I know the three criminals are not good at what they do, but it is absolutely wild that Forrest Whitaker wears an outfit with his name on it. Teen girls shoplifting at Walmart know not to do that.
Yeah, come on.
Bad at crime.
And he built the security system, so he should understand how criminals work. He's fighting against them in his day job.
And he was like, oh, well, I didn't expect anyone to be here. And I just thought, like, we would wipe the tapes. That's still very bad at crime.
You don't have any clothes that aren't your monogrammed work coveralls? You couldn't wear a black t-shirt? What if you run into a neighbor while you're coming out the door?
Right. You can't steal your coworkers that have their name on it. Be better.
Or the flip. It's like, why didn't you just put your social security number on there?
It's embarrassing watching people be bad at crime.
Yeah.
Not like me, who is famously good at crime.
Right. Right. Oh, I mean, embarrassing. Oh, well. I'm still happy that I watched this movie. It's better than I remembered it.
Yeah.
And being able to see not only K-Stu, but Jodie Foster was a treat and a half.
And they're both just excellent in it.
Ugh.
Especially Kristen Stewart. I mean, you watch her and it's just like, oh yeah, this is something really special. Like, kids aren't usually this good in movies.
Mm-hmm.
She's really good from a young age doing the, like, I'm dying and convulsing thing. You can tell directors were like, I'm going to make her do that throughout her career.
This is going to be a crucial thing for her.
I'm going to put her in movies where she has to do that multiple times.
God.
So I'm proud of her.
Yeah.
Cody, next week,
yes,
we are switching from a K-Stu movie to an Anna Kendrick movie.
Hell yeah.
And we're doing Pitch Perfect.
Let's go. Let's fucking go. Yeah, everyone dust off your cups. It's go time.
Get excited.
It's going to be in the top 40 because of the episode.
Notable queer baiting text. Pitch Perfect.
Yeah.
We have some patrons to thank. Cody, do you want to start us off?
Absolutely. Thank you to Alex Dornan.
Ooh, thank you to Jasmine Anastasia.
Ow. Thank you to Megan Pattinson.
Ooh, thank you to Katya Karp.
Pew pew. Thank you to Hope Castile.
Ooh, thank you to Maddie Facinelli.
Oh, ow. Thank you to Genevieve Morgan.
Ooh, thank you to Danielle Burke.
Thank you to Sophia Salinger.
Ooh, thank you to Lara Forty.
Pew, pew. Thank you to Dan Zeklos.
Ooh, thank you to Emily Ozera.
Ow. Thank you to Jaylene Ivashkov.
Ooh, and last, but certainly not least, thank you to Ashlyn Vogel.
Pew, 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 pew.
Megan, I'm incredibly excited to know what fanfiction that you have brought into the space.
I have been watching the 50 Shades of Grey movies.
Oh my god.
I think partly inspired by knowing that I was coming on this podcast, something in my brain was like, it's time.
Unfortunate extra credit, yeah.
And of course, famously, iconically, a Twilight fanfic to start.
Right.
It's very hard to find a Master of the Universe, which is the original title, PDF on the internet. I had to do a little digging. And, you know, it's just the same. They just replaced the names. But I read the book when it came out. What I have done is pulled any reference to Inner Goddess from the first book.
Oh, man.
So there are way more times that Bella in Master of the Universe refers to her inner goddess than I will have time to read today, so I had to curate.
Sure.
But when they're strung together, it becomes a sort of found poem.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
So
I love blackout poetry.
yeah, I'm a poet. Now I'm adding it to my CV.
Oh my god.
So if you're both ready, I can jump in.
Yes. Oh my god.
Okay.
My very small inner goddess sways in a gentle, victorious samba. My inner goddess is thrilled. My inner goddess is doing the merengue with some salsa moves. My inner goddess has stopped dancing and is staring too, open-mouthed, drooling slightly. Yes, my inner goddess is thrilled. My inner goddess stops jumping and smiles serenely like the cat that got the cream. Oh yes, she mouths. My inner goddess glows so bright she could light up Portland. My inner goddess frowns at me. My inner goddess jumps up and down with cheerleading pom-poms shouting yes at me. My inner goddess is doing backflips in a routine worthy of a Russian Olympic gymnast. My inner goddess bounces up and down like a small child waiting for ice cream. My inner goddess is panting. My inner goddess roars. My inner goddess is going to explode. My inner goddess looks like someone snatched her ice cream. Go, girl. My inner goddess has her pom-poms in hand. She's in cheerleading mode. My inner goddess is spinning like a world-class ballerina, pirouette after pirouette. My inner goddess is smoldering and not in a good way. My inner goddess is doing the dance of the 7 veils. I close my eyes, trying to calm myself down, to connect with my inner sub. She's there somewhere, hiding behind my inner goddess. End scene.
There are literal tears in my eyes right now.
I love that her inner goddess in 50 Shades of Grey is just like a horny imaginary friend.
Yeah, literally though.
That was written like a fucking children's book.
And
God.
a lot of these moments are in like heat of passion sex scenes, and she's
Absolutely.
like, my inner goddess wants ice cream. It's like, what is going on?
The poetic dichotomy of it starting with like, oh, it's like I'm like a kid waiting for ice cream, and then the ice cream gets taken away later on. Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Let her
I
cook,
really
actually. She was
found
cooking.
Some real through lines when I did a Control F in the Master of the Universe PDF.
That could be performed like a spoken word.
Absolutely.
And that's really more of a credit to your delivery than her writing.
God.
I'd call it a
Oh my
collaboration
God.
between the two of us.
Christ, I've never cried this much on an episode before. My God.
May all of your
Thank
inner
you for
goddesses
that
light
gift.
up the
Truly
city of
my
Portland.
honor.
Whew. My Apple Watch is like, hey, you need to fucking chill out for a second. It has been an unbelievable joy to have you on the show, Megan. Where can folks go to be able to support your work?
Yeah, my Twitter is at Megan Kirb, and that is usually where I'm sharing all of my writing.
Hell yeah.
I love that. I can't wait to see your foray into spoken word throughout the rest of this year. And we will patiently await our soon, hopefully, collaboration with this Twilight Tarot deck. Once your hands recover from your current tarot deck.
Hell yeah.
One can only dream. Well, friends, I'm going to say you're welcome and not I'm sorry for that fanfiction because, my God. Take care of yourselves. And as we say here in the Pacific Northwest,
Get bit.
ooh.
Ow. Into the Twilight is an Earbud Media production. You can follow us on Twitter at Into the Twilight or on TikTok at Into the Twilight Show. You can find me at Cody Corral on Twitter and Allie at Alexandria Does. And you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Into the Twilight. We have merch, so much stuff. All those links are in the episode description. And make sure to rate and review us on your favorite podcast hosting platform. It really helps the show. Thanks. Bye.
You've been listening to Earbud Media Production. Earbud Media, audio for everyone.